The golden morning sun slowly climbed over the rolling hills, painting the rocky slopes in shades of honey and fire. From every corner of the valley came the soft bleating of goats and sheep, their voices blending with the chirping of birds and the rustle of the wind. Shepherds stretched their arms, shaking off the chill of dawn, and prepared for another long day under the open sky. Children carried baskets full of feed and followed the animals, their laughter echoing through the mist like music. The flocks moved together like waves of white and brown, their hooves creating a gentle drumbeat on the dry earth. It was a sound that spoke of peace and belonging, a harmony between people, land, and animals. No one could imagine life without the herds anymore. They were as much a part of the village as the fire and the stars. Each morning, shepherds led their animals along winding trails marked by stones, grass, and memory. They knew every valley, every scent of the soil, and every whisper of the wind. Their eyes could read the land as easily as you or I might read a storybook. They noticed when the grass turned brittle, when clouds hinted at rain, or when birds changed their song. Over years of patience, humans had become quiet students of nature. Their animals depended on their wisdom, and they, in turn, depended on the animals' strength and trust. From this bond, life flourished. The goats gave sweet milk, which people turned into cheese to last through the dry seasons. The sheep offered thick wool, warm and soft, spun into thread and woven into blankets that kept families alive during the coldest nights. Nothing was ever wasted. Every drop, every tuft of wool, every bone was used with care and gratitude. But with blessings came new challenges. Predators still roamed, wolves, lions, and sometimes hungry strangers from other valleys. To protect what they loved, the people began to unite more closely. They built low stone walls around the flocks and lit fires that burned through the night. Fathers and sons took turns watching from the shadows, listening for danger. In the glow of those fires, a new kind of trust grew, not only between man and beast, but among families themselves. The village became one big family, working together to survive. At night, when the stars blanketed the sky, they gathered by the fire to share food, milk, and stories. Some told tales of brave goats who climbed impossible cliffs to save their herders. Others sang about magical sheep whose wool shone like moonlight and brought good fortune. Children sat wide-eyed, believing every word, while the elders smiled softly, remembering the first wild herds. As time passed, families began to mark their animals with painted symbols, spirals, lines, and circles made of red clay and ash. These marks were not just decoration, but the first signs of ownership and identity. Visitors from far valleys would see these marks and know which family the flock belonged to. Trade soon followed. Strangers brought shells, salt, or shiny stones to exchange for wool and milk. Through these simple exchanges, the first threads of trade were woven. People began to see their animals not only as food or labor, but as wealth and pride. With growing herds came the need for cooperation. The villagers decided to stay closer to one another, building homes near the best grazing lands. They took turns tending the flocks, repairing walls, and guarding at night. Children learned songs that guided animals home and gentle ways to calm newborn lambs. They gave them names and whispered to them as if speaking to friends. And maybe, in some small way, the animals understood, fear faded, replaced by trust and care. Shepherds learned that a calm voice and patient heart could move a herd better than a stick ever could. They trained dogs, clever, loyal companions who ran beside the goats, guiding and protecting them. Together, man, dog, and flock became a perfect team, moving like one heartbeat across the land. The seasons rolled on, and with them, the flocks multiplied. Families began to follow the rhythm of the earth, moving to green pastures in spring, resting by rivers in summer, and returning home in autumn. These were the first nomads, carrying their homes, tools, and dreams wherever the grass grew fresh. Their lives became poems written in dust and sky. Every sunrise brought a new horizon, every night a new story. When they met other groups, they shared food, laughter, and knowledge, new ways to spin wool, new songs for calming animals, new paths through the mountains, the world began to weave itself together. Even as they traveled, the herders carried with them the memory of the first wild goats. At night, they gazed up at the stars and told their children stories about the ancient days, when humans first reached out a hand to feed a frightened creature. They said the spirits of those first animals still watched over them, glowing softly among the stars. The children would close their eyes and imagine the hills whispering back. Generation by generation, the bond between people and animals deepened. The goats and sheep gave more than milk and wool. They gave humans a reason to stay, to plan, to hope. Caring for them taught patience, kindness, and responsibility. In the gentle rhythm of herding, people learned to listen to nature's heartbeat. With every passing season, their world became more connected and peaceful. As herds grew, trade blossomed. Villages exchanged wool for grain, cheese for shells, and animals for tools. Some regions became famous for their thick wool, others for strong goats that climbed like mountain spirits. This quiet trade built friendships, peace, and prosperity. With wealth came new ideas about fairness and leadership. Elders met under large trees to make decisions when to move the herds, how to share pastures, how to settle disputes. They discovered that words could be stronger than weapons. Through herding, humans were learning the earliest lessons of law and community. And so, from humble beginnings, a wild goat, a warm fire, and a handful of patient humans, a new chapter of civilization began. The patience used to guide flocks became the same patience needed to guide people. Cooperation replaced fear, and hope replaced hunger. In time, these lessons would grow into villages, cities, and nations. But for now, the shepherds only cared for the sunrise, the bleating of lambs, and the promise of another peaceful day. They knew they were part of something bigger, a living bond that connected them to the land and every creature on it. The flocks grazed quietly, their wool catching the evening light. The wind brushed through horns and grass, carrying a melody of calm. Fires flickered near the stone walls as laughter filled the air. The stars shimmered above the hills, blessing the bond that changed the world forever. From wild goats to pet sheep, this was not just a story about animals. It was the story of humanity learning to live in harmony with nature and with itself. After generations of farming, early humans had begun to notice something new. Every morning, when they worked in the fields, small herds of wild goats appeared nearby. The goats were clever and curious, nibbling at leftover stalks and watching the humans from the hilltops. They weren't afraid anymore, just cautious, as if trying to understand these strange two-legged creatures. Sometimes, a brave goat would wander close to the fields, sniffing a basket of grain or a pile of straw. The farmers laughed softly and tossed a handful of food their way. Day after day, the goats came closer, and soon they became part of village life. This was the beginning of something wonderful, the taming of wild animals. The humans realized that goats gave more than meat. Their milk could be drunk, their fur could be spun, and their droppings even made the soil richer. Children learned to follow the herds, to call them with soft whistles, and to keep them safe from wolves. The bond between humans and animals was forming, one gentle step at a time. At first, keeping animals was messy and loud. Goats climbed onto roofs, chewed baskets, and even stole vegetables from gardens. But families began to understand how to guide them, using fences made of sticks and branches. Little by little, the goats learned to trust the people who fed and protected them. Farmers began to mark the strongest goats with bits of clay or paint, remembering which ones gave the most milk. They kept those goats safe and let them have more babies. In time, the wild herds of the mountains gave birth to something new, tame goats. The people had changed the future without even knowing it. Not far away, another animal watched from the fields, the sheep. Sheep were gentle, slower, and easier to keep in groups. Their wool grew thick and soft, perfect for warmth during cold nights. Humans discovered that when they trimmed the wool, it grew back again, like magic. They began spinning the wool into thread and weaving it into cloth. For the first time, humans could make clothes warmer and softer than animal skins. This changed life in every cold valley and windy hill. Clothing became not only practical, but also beautiful. People dyed wool with berries and leaves, turning white threads into red, brown, and gold. Villagers began to wear colors that reflected the earth they lived on. Now, the hum of spinning and weaving joined the sounds of farming and laughter. Every family had their own tasks, tending the fields, feeding the goats, shearing the sheep, and spinning wool. Children learned early how to carry water, gather grass, and guide the flocks at sunset. Their songs echoed through the valleys as they led the animals home. When night fell, families sat around fires, wrapped in wool blankets, watching sparks dance into the sky. Grandparents told stories about the first brave goats that came down from the mountains. They said the goats chose the humans, not the other way around. The children smiled and imagined wild herds whispering in the dark hills, deciding who to trust. Over time, villages began to grow around the animals they cared for. Shepherds built small shelters for the flocks, using branches and stones. They slept nearby to guard against wolves and thieves. Dogs, once wild hunters themselves, now slept beside the sheep, barking to keep danger away. The partnership between species grew stronger each day. With goats and sheep, humans didn't need to rely only on crops. Even in dry seasons, they had milk to drink, cheese to make, and wool to trade. Their lives became more balanced, more secure. Hunger was no longer the shadow that followed every drought. People began traveling with their herds, searching for fresh grass and gentle weather. Some families became nomads, moving with the seasons, while others stayed in one place, building stone pens and huts. Both groups shared one thing: they loved and depended on their animals. Shepherds started naming their goats and sheep, knowing each one by its voice and behavior. They learned which sheep liked to wander, which goat always led the herd, and which lambs were playful and fast. The animals became friends, companions, and even family. Songs were made about them, soft and rhythmic, sung under starlit skies. A shepherd's flute echoed across the hills, calling the animals home at dusk. The bond between human and animal became part of the rhythm of life. When lambs were born, the entire village rejoiced. They believed new life meant blessings from the earth and sky. They held small celebrations, offering milk and grain to thank the spirits of the land. Children helped the newborns stand, their laughter mixing with the gentle bleats of the herd. Goats and sheep brought not only food and clothing, but a sense of peace. They reminded people of patience, that care and kindness made the world stronger. And as flocks grew larger, villages began to exchange animals with distant neighbors. Trade routes formed: goats for salt, wool for grain, milk for pottery. The world was slowly becoming connected. Every step of this story, every bleat, every hoofprint, carried humanity toward civilization, because taming animals meant more than survival. It meant understanding, it meant seeing the beauty in cooperation. And that cooperation would shape the next 1,000 years of human life. Before, humans chased animals, now they walked beside them. They had learned that true power came not from the hunt, but from harmony. Goats and sheep became living bridges between the wild world and the human world. Through them, people learned compassion, they learned to nurture, to wait, and to build. And slowly, they began to see themselves not just as masters of nature, but as caretakers. Each morning, as the sun rose and painted the sky gold, shepherds led their flocks out once more. The earth, once a place of endless struggle, now felt like home. And in that home, the gentle sound of bleating goats and soft wool brushing against the grass became the song of a new age, the age of friendship between humans and animals.